Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Kano Tryharding Modern. So, this morning, I had this deck queued up to try and play, and I was like, I haven't played Spirits ever, and I recently got Cavern of Souls, and I have like all of the mana base now. So, and I have the Skyclave apparition. So why not make some Spirits? And then I sat here and I'm like, I'm so unenthused about playing this deck right now. And I'm like, why do I feel this way? And then I realized I hadn't drank any of my coffee yet. Ugh. So, we're going to go ahead and try and play Spirits Company. For those of you that don't know what the deck is or does, it's basically a Spirit Tribal Aether Vial deck that plays Noble Hierarch for fixing and acceleration. That tries to be disruptive with Skyclave Apparition to take things off the board, Spell Queller to take things out of, well, the stack, Drogskull Captain to give everything hexproof in 1-1, multiple Drogskull Captains to give everything hexproof in 1-1, Mausoleum Wanderers to start the disruption early, kind of as a... Oh, I don't even remember the Merfolk card. This is kind of the ubiquitous effect now, isn't it? For spirits. As well as Rattle Chains for... casting stuff with flash and giving other things hexproof temporarily. Shacklegeist for clearing the way or stopping an Emrakul from attacking, just as an idea. And then Selfless Spirit to give the whole board indestructible and Collected Company as a way to dig and get a whole bunch of creatures out from the top of your deck. Now, I haven't played Spirits before, ever, so if I do this and it's completely miserable, I'm sorry. But it is a meta deck right now, so I figured I might as well try and learn it, and maybe we'll glean something that we can use to play against Spirits decks better in the future. A lot of the decks that I play tend to hard counter this deck, but it's only because I don't have I don't play the top decks in the format right now. We kind of stick in the tier 2 category most of the time, except Hammer Time. Hammer Time's tier 1. Anyway, let's go ahead and take this into a modern league, and we'll see what happens. Oh, I'm going to try and appease the YouTube algorithm now. I normally say this at the very end of the video, but if you like this kind of content, you should totally subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. It's completely free to do, and it's a huge amount of support. Once I get to 1,000 subs, I'll be able to hit monetization, and I'm super excited about that. I think that would be really cool. So, please, if you haven't already, consider doing so. Alrighty, round 1, here we go. Oh, we have a Noble, which means we can play like Skyclave or Drogskull on turn 2. It's not an Aether Vial hand. We don't have a bunch of like 2-drops to load up on, but we're going to try it. If Noble gets removed, we do have a Selfless Spirit we can play. Opponent starts Flooded Strand. We draw Supreme Phantom, which is good to follow up this line with. So we're going to start Breeding Pool and a Noble Hierarch. So... we could be a variant of humans, we could be infect, we could be spirits. It's one of those things that can occasionally get you an extra percentage point when you win, is, if you have a mana base that's flexible enough and you don't lose anything by doing it, you should kind of like, basically try and pump fake that you're a certain type of deck versus a certain other type of deck. We're going to play out Supreme Phantom rather than Selfless Spirit because Supreme Phantom can survive Ren and 6. Okay. Opponent untaps. It would appear that they are at least Temur Uro. The fact that they have Flooded Strand and potentially white mana tells me this is probably Uro Omnath rather than Temur Uro, and yes, I've started making the decision because the decks are slightly different despite not feeling that way at all. One of them you have to worry about Omnath, the other one you don't. The other one you have to worry about, oh, what's it called? Primetime. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. Okay, 3 options. We can play Drogskull Captain, we can Skyclave Apparition hitting Ren and 6, we can Mausoleum Wanderer and Selfless Spirit. I kind of want to play Skyclave, but I also want to save Skyclave for Uro because they're probably going to get Uro back soon. I could just play Drogskull and hit Ren and 6 for 2, but I also don't want my opponent... I kind of want to take Ren and 6 away from my opponent, because if they don't have any more lands in hand, I don't want them to get more lands. So I think I'm on the Skyclave plan. Play a Plains. Play Skyclave Apparition. Take out Ren and 6. Go to combat, get in for 1. Opponent untaps. They play another Uro. Now they're either choosing a land or don't have one, and it appears they were just choosing. So next turn, I don't think we main deck any Remorseful Cleric. Next turn, my opponent is going to cast Uro, which is going to be an issue. Alternatively, they just cast 3 Uros, undoing all of the damage from their mana base. We untap. We draw Collected Company. So, play Moorland Haunt, go to combat, we're going to attack for 4 and leave up Collected Company. Basically because if we hit a Spell Queller on Uro, we can actually delay our opponent from winning while also increasing our clock. It will take most of their mana, and unless they have a Force of Negation in hand, which they might. Alright, opponent plays Ren and 6. They pick up a Misty, they play Misty, and then they pass the turn. So casting Collected Company here is probably still correct, because we need basically as much of a clock as possible. We could activate Moorland Haunt and then save Collected Company for an Uro. I'm actually going to do that. I don't think we can let our opponent actually stick an Uro on the board. Alright, we untap and draw another Collected Company, which makes Collected Company now safe. Go to combat. Attack Ren and 6. Attack Ren and 6. Attack my opponent. Okay, opponent Growth Spirals. Whiffs. Ren and 6 down. 2 damage to my opponent. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent cracks Misty Rainforest. Gets a Forest. Growth Spirals again. Whiffs again. Wow. There were several Uros cast and several Growth Spirals cast that did not put lands into play. Which tells me that my opponent basically is guaranteed to have a 3-mana counterspell here. There's still no way I'm not casting a Collected Company here. This is a slightly awkward decision, because if we hit a Skyclave Apparition, we want a Collected Company after Uro's on board, but if we hit a Spell Queller, we want to do it prior to Uro entering the board, and because Uro has an incredibly powerful enters the battlefield effect, we want to cast it beforehand. Opponent shocks Temple Garden. They pass. We untap. We draw Botanical Sanctum. So we could play Drogskull Captain and Mausoleum Wanderer. Drogskull Captain does increase our clock in the air, and so does Mausoleum Wanderer. If I cast Collected Company now, my opponent at least has to pitch another card for a Force of Negation, so hopefully we hit another Skyclave Apparition, we can hit Uro here. Opponent does pitch Cryptic Command to a Force of Negation. Well, at least we limited the number of cards that they have. So go to combat, we're going to attack our opponent for 3 in the air. Basically just to counteract Uro's ability to gain life, except that that doesn't matter. I haven't played a land yet this turn. Turn off auto yields. Okay, cool. And our opponent for 1. Play Botanical Sanctum. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Casting Collected Company on our turn versus their turn. It was still better to do it on our turn because our opponent at least had to pitch 2 cards. If I cast it on my opponent's turn, they would have just paid mana and still had a Cryptic Command. Alright, opponent plays a Jace the Mind Sculptor. Brainstorms. Alright, we untap. We draw Drogskull Captain. Play Drogskull. Play Drogskull. And now the whole board has hexproof. Aww. We get pathed. Now the whole board does not have hexproof. So go to combat. Attack Jace for 3. We are going to leave the Spirit back on defense just to block Uro. It feels pretty bad, but at the same time, I don't want to give up the captain, and we are starting to get to a low life total. Okay, opponent plays a Teferi Time Raveler. The only targeted legal is Drog Skull Captain, so they bounce that. They go to combat, they attack, gain life, draw a card, land into play. We chump. Opponent is casting another Uro, because it is beneficial for them to do so. They can have an untapped blocker for our Skyclave Apparition, so it's kind of reasonable. It also draws them another card and gains them more life. We untap. We draw Horizon Canopy. Play Canopy, cycle it. Get a Noble. So, play Mausoleum Wanderer. If my opponent's holding a Cryptic, they might have done something there, but... Play Drog Skull Captain. Pump Wanderer. Then play Selfless Spirit. Alright. Pass the turn. We actually have enough to block Uro, which doesn't really matter that much, because my opponent could just basically recast him from the grave. Okay, opponent upticks to Fairy. Cracks Misty. Mystic Sanctuary. Puts Path on top of their deck. So they are drawing a Path next turn. They attack with Uro, they gain some life, put a land into play. So they drew the Path, meaning that we can't do any fancy blocking shenanigans, unfortunately. I really suspect my opponent has a Lightning Bolt, so I have to chump here. Okay. Alright, I'm gonna scoop it up. So, versus Uro. If I was slightly better with decks like this, I would play Meddling Mage probably in this matchup. I think what we want is Path and Remorseful Cleric. It strikes me that we probably don't need Shacklegeist or possibly Glasspool Mimic. I think I'm fine trimming one of those. Mausoleum Wanderer only is... Well, I mean, it's one of the best things we could lead on, I suppose. And I don't really want to cut the aggression part of the deck, right? Selfless Spirit doesn't really protect us from anything. They might have a Supreme Verdict. So I'll keep one in the deck. I guess I can cut a Noble. Yeah, a little bit of difficulty in sideboarding here. Do I actually even want... Yeah, I need Path. I need a way to get rid of Uro. And technically Remorseful Cleric fits that bill, but I need a way to actually answer it permanently, even if it is giving my opponent a land. I think I'm going to cut another Noble. I think I would much rather start Aether Vial. Maybe we need an Aether Vial hand against this deck. Alright, I would like to play first. Well, it's not an Aether Vial hand, but it is one that plays Spell Queller quickly, so I will keep. We will start Botanical Sanctum, Noble Hierarch. Pass the turn. My opponent untaps, plays a Flooded Strand, and passes. We draw Rattle Chains. So, play a Forest. I think I'm going to leave up Queller or Rattle Chains. No attacks, because we might need the mana. We actually really need to protect Noble Hierarch if possible, because it's our only source of white mana. Okay, opponent fetches up a Ketria Triome. They untap. They shock a Breeding Pool into a Renin 6, which I will Queller. Alright, we untap. We draw a Path. Play a land. So I can leave up Rattle Chains and just play the other Noble. I can leave up Rattle Chains and Path, actually. Or I can play Drog Skull Captain. If I leave up Rattle Chains, I potentially play around a single removal spell. If my opponent has more than one removal spell, though, this could be pretty devastating. So we hit our opponent for 4, pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays Misty Rainforest and then cracks Misty Rainforest for a Temple Garden. They're going to play Teferi. So we're going to flash in Rattle Chains, giving Spell Queller Hexproof. This way they can't unsummon Spell Queller to get Renin 6. And we had to do that in response to Teferi, because Teferi removes our ability to cast spells at anything other than sorcery speed. Okay, opponent unsummons Rattle Chains. Alright. We untap. We draw Glasspool Mimic. Man, we are 1 mana away, too. I think playing Drogskull Captain is correct. I could attack Teferi and leave up Rattle Chains again. Or I can just attack my opponent for 5, which is half their life total. No, I can't leave... Yeah, I have to attack Teferi if I want to leave up Rattle Chains. I think that's tempting, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, kill Teferi, leave up Rattle Chains to protect Drogskull Captain. Pass the turn. If we resolve a Rattle Chains, Glasspool Mimic can be another Spell Queller at instant speed. Opponent plays an island. Growth Spirals. Plays a Misty, cracks Misty. Gets a Forest. Plays another Teferi. So Rattle Chains again, we're going to give Captain Hexproof. Okay. Opponent unsummons a Noble. That's kind of interesting. They're just dead though, right? We draw Moorland Haunt. Play the Haunt. Play the Glasspool Mimic. Copy Captain. Kill our opponent. Alright, that's what we want to be doing. That's how we want to be playing this game. Did I learn anything there? Interesting that we drew our only 2 nobles. And noble might actually be better than I'm giving it credit for. Maybe we want Force of Negation for a Planeswalker. Hitting a ramp spell's probably not good enough, but if they have Hour of Promise, that would be worth forcing. Knight of Autumn doesn't really do anything. Meddling Mage, like I said, I'm not really good with Nevermore effects. I don't play with them often enough. I know enough about the metagame that I can make a call that's not terrible, but I don't know necessarily enough how to play around what my opponent has in hand. I need to practice that more for sure. I think we still try running it like this. I think it is correct to bring in Force of Negation. The question is, I don't know over what, and I've taken out a couple of blue cards, which I think might have to come back in the deck if I was going to do that. So, yeah, alright. I'm just going to run it like this. Maybe I shouldn't be running Remorseful Cleric in this matchup. Maybe I should just be relying on Path. I'm not 100% sure on that. Well, we have mana of any color we could need. The problem is this hand is way too fair and very slow. It's probably a reasonable keep. I would much rather have a Noble or a Aether Vial, though. Yeah, I think I'm actually going to mulligan. The hand was not bad, but I think we can do better. This looks better. I will keep this, and I'm going to put back Horizon Canopy. Alright. Opponent plays a Flooded Strand. We draw Windswept Heath. So play Windswept Heath. We're going to fetch Breeding Pool, and then play Noble Hierarch. I know we have the option of Waterlogged Grove. I'm not a huge fan of leading on the canopy lands that sack to draw. The reason I put back Horizon Canopy itself is because I like the combination of green, blue, plus white. And I think if I just fetch and shock immediately, I'm going to lose less life over time than if I played Waterlogged Grove first. Opponent is in the tank. So get a Breeding Pool. Untapped. Play Noble. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent gets a Raugrin Triome. That tells me they have Path. Or that they have a Breeding Pool and want to diversify their mana sources. That's fine. Okay, we draw a Spell Queller, which is unfortunate that we can't leave up Spell Queller this turn. Play Plains, pass the turn. So we'll Rattle Chains, which will give all of our spirits Flash. Okay, opponent picks up a Flooded Strand. Plays a Flooded Strand, cracks it. Gets an island. Plays an Uro. Gains some life. I should have actually responded to that with Rattle Chains, now that I think about it. Giving Rattle Chains Hexproof. because now my opponent gets to leave up Path. And they would have had to cast it on our turn into open mana, which potentially, if I had like a second Rattle Chains, I could really blow them out, but they probably didn't want a Path there anyway, so I guess that's fine. We draw a Supreme Phantom, play Waterlogged Grove, go to combat, attack Renin 6. Captain's probably going to draw a Path here. That's okay, because this gets us up to company mana. Get an island. Blue and white are our primary colors. We're basically just splashing green for collected company at this point. So Renin 6 goes to 1. They uptick picking up a land. They shock a Steam Vents. Time Warp. That's brutal. So they can kill Rattle Chains, which pretty much takes all of our momentum away from us, if they want. Or they can play a fetch land, crack it, and then pick it back up again. Alright, opponent plays Big Teferi, then plays a land. Kills Rattle Chains and upticks Big Teferi? I guess they F6'd, so they didn't really have to untap lands. A little late for Aether Vial. Alright, pass the turn, we'll leave up Queller and company. We're getting to the point of the game, though, that we can't really recover. Not with two massive planeswalkers. We have to get lucky and kind of resolve the company here. And we're much more inclined to play company than we are to play Queller, because if our opponent taps out for anything, it's more likely to resolve. So my opponent is going to Mystic Sanctuary Time Warp. Oh great, I forgot this deck can do the Time Warp trick. That's disgusting. That belongs in the Time Warp deck. This is by far the worst abuse of the Time Warp card. Well, there's nothing I can really do. I can cast Company now and kind of guarantee resolution of the cards on board, but it doesn't mean anything when my opponent can just downtick their Planeswalkers and kill everything. Alright, opponent picks up a land. Plays a land tapped. Passes. And they can just keep doing this, can't they? Alright. Untap some lands. Because I'm pretty sure that this deck would play like 4 Mystic Sanctuary. They untap. Play Flooded Strand. Fetch with Flooded Strand. Get a Mystic Sanctuary. Putting Time Warp on top of their deck. Uptick to draw Time Warp. Yeah. Yep, we just can't beat that. It doesn't matter what I put into play. It's outside of Queller range. So is Big Teferi. Is outside of Skyclave Apparition range. So you just lose. I'll see you guys in round 2. Alrighty, round 2. Here we go. The old Collected Company Aether Vial no plays hand. Yeah, I gotta mulligan that. We need to cast something along the way, right? Alright. Yeah, we can keep this. I think I'm gonna put back Selfless Spirit. This might be a time when Glasspool Mimic is actually a land. Given that we have a play on turn 1 and turn 2, Glasspool Mimic would come down on turn 3 at the earliest. My opponent starts Horizon Canopy into Aether Vial, which means they're either green-white Death and Taxes or Hate Bears or whatever it's called, and then, or they're Spirits, which is probably more likely. So, we'll start Mausoleum Wanderer, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, upticks Aether Vial. They play Aether Vial, so they're on an all Aether Vial hand. Interesting. So we untap, draw planes, play planes, go to combat, attack for 1. Alright, opponent takes 1. We're missing a damage here, but I think I'd rather leave up Rattle Chains. Okay, opponent vials in a 1-drop. Champion. Okay, so this is the, like, probably the Bant humans deck rather than the original, like, 4-color humans or whatever it is. But it could just be the regular humans list that I'm remembering or used to. I think our deck may actually beat theirs if we actually draw our interactive spirits. I think they can go taller faster than we can, but we can maintain basically comparable size, as well as have things like Spell Queller and Skyclave. Which Skyclave here would be amazing, because we could take out Aether Vial, draw Noble Hierarch. Opponent is going to vial in a 2-drop. It is probably Kite Sail Freebooter. Yep. So they can take Collected Company, which is fine. It's not what we would be playing anyway. Okay. Put counter on Champion. We go to our main. Now, we can either play Windswept Heath or Waterlogged Grove. I could play Glass Pool Mimic at instant speed, kind of as a... No, I can't actually. I cannot play it at instant speed, can I? I mistakenly said that game 1, or round 1. That is not something I can actually do. I can if I have Aether Vial, but I can't from Rattle Chains. So in that case, probably what we're going to do here is I'm going to play Waterlogged Grove, we'll play out Noble Hierarch, and we'll attack in the air with a Rattle Chains. The problem is, with my opponent having 2 Aether Vials and only 1 land in hand, the remaining 4 cards in their hand is all action, of some kind or other. So we hit our opponent for 3, they go ticking up Aether Vial, probably both of them. Alright. Opponent plays out a Noble Hierarch, Pumping Champion, goes to combat, attacks for 3, 4. We're going to take 4. Alright, opponent vials in probably a Thalia's Lieutenant. Oh, just Thalia. Okay. And Reflector Mage. Bouncing Rattle Chains. That's annoying. Oh, shoot. No, crap. I was F6'd, and then I was lagging, and it wouldn't let me turn off auto yields. So, I should have... Okay, never mind. It didn't matter. I thought this said during your opponent's next turn they can't cast spells with the creature's chosen name, but whatever. Alright, we draw Misty. Well, when we're not drawing Lords... Yeah, alright. I might be able to nab something with Queller, but the problem is that Champion is too large now. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and concede and go to game 2. My opponent also had a very crazily action-heavy hand, so... We're definitely bringing in Path here. Maybe we want Knight of Autumn. Knight of Autumn seems better than Glass Pool Mimic on average. My opponent also probably is only going to have Path rather than damage or destruction removal, so we're going to take out Selfless Spirit. And I'm going to cut one... No, maybe I don't cut one Noble. I think I'm going to cut our last Glass Pool Mimic. I could play Collector Oof if I was willing to take out my own Aether Vials, but I'm not really willing to do that. So, I would like to play first. Well, it's an Aether Vial hand. We have 2 1-drops, so I think I'm going to keep. We will start with Horizon Canopy. Play Vial. Pass the turn. If we don't draw a 2-drop, we might activate Vial in response to its own trigger to put the other Noble Hierarch into play, then take it up to 2. Or we could just cast a Noble and Vial in a Noble. But it plays their own Aether Vial, Cavern on Human. So Aether Vial, we will tick up to 1. Draw Cavern. Cavern of Souls, name Spirit. Play a Noble. Pass the turn. Opponent upticks their Vial. They play Unclaimed Territory, naming Human. Then they play a Thalia's Lieutenant. Enters the battlefield, they'll Vial in a 1-drop in response to the trigger. This way, both creatures get to benefit from the... Well, I guess they decided the Thalia's Lieutenant was better to have larger. Alright, on my opponent's end step, Vial in a Noble Hierarch. Untap. Aether Vial ticking up. We draw Botanical Sanctum. We cannot play both Drogskull Captains this turn. I'm actually going to sacrifice this Horizon Canopy and get a draw. Well, that's kind of unfortunate. I really wanted something I could Vial, like really badly. We'll play Horizon Canopy, and I am going to play out Drogskull. It's kind of risky, but I don't think the Hexproof is going to matter that much. Opponent ticks up Vial to 2. Okay, opponent freebooters. We have nothing they can freeboot, though. But they know we don't have any tricks. They pump Thalia's Lieutenant, and they pump Champion. Attack us for 6. We're not going to block. We go to 11. They're going to vial in a 2-drop. Is it another Lieutenant? It is. It's a Phantasmal Image on Lieutenant. That is a broken amount of pump. So we're actually taking 10, going to 7. So you remember that thing, how I said at the beginning of this matchup that we might stand a chance because we're interactive and our opponent's deck is focused more on getting raw power out? I don't know if that's true. It doesn't feel true right now. Alright. Sack Canopy. Draw Collected Company. Like a million miles too late. Because now we have to start chump blocking. I'm really bad at decks that have to top deck naturally. Let me think here. We can vial in Drogskull Captain. I need to block with both my nobles, which means I probably need to play and sack Waterlogged Grove. Alright, pass the turn. But I don't think we can recover from this. If I get a Skyclave Apparition, maybe. What really needed to happen is we needed to not draw that Horizon Canopy, and we needed to draw Collected Company. Because if I could block and then activate Company while also vialing in Captain, we might have enough of a board presence to actually survive. But having to block with both nobles means that we are not ever going to have the mana for Company, I think. So the next best thing we can do is block and block, try and activate Waterlogged Grove. Another Thalia's Lieutenant. Yep. I mean, opponent's probably just what I would call the nuts right now. Alright, they go to combat. Well, they go to their main phase, because they did that on their upkeep, so they could do it in response to Aether Vial's triggers. They pump their whole team. They go to combat. Now we can't even block the other Lieutenant or Thalia's, or not Thalia's Lieutenant, but the other freebooter. Which means we have to block with this Captain. Alright, well, move to blocks. Block here, block here, block here. Okay. Sack Waterlogged Grove. We gotta draw, like, Path, maybe. There's Path. So what I can do is vial in the other Captain. Then I need to path... I need to path this freebooter, actually. Because I need my other Captain to stay alive. The difference between having, like, 2 and 3 mana next turn is nothing. And we needed to have both blocks, so we couldn't draw that path pre-combat. Our opponent didn't take anything with freebooter, so we don't get anything back. Opponent gets an island, we lose our guys, we go down to 3. But it's not like we have Supreme Verdict, so pretty sure we're just dead here. Because we're going to have to block with all of our guys. Okay, we're not taking up Aether Vial. Yep. Well, we got lucky, navigated that as intelligently as I possibly could, and just didn't win. I'll see you guys in round 3. Alrighty. Round 3, here we go. Well, you know what? Sure, let's try it. We're going to play against the one guy main deck in a Braids. Okay, this would appear to be Ad Nauseam. Ad Nauseam is the only deck I know that plays Seachrome Coast and Serum Visions, so... And definitely Lotus Bloom. This is Ad Nauseam for sure. The good news is we have Collector Oof in our sideboard. So Shock Temple Garden, play Aether Vial, pass the turn. We need to draw lands, though. We need to draw at least one land here. Opponent suspends another Lotus Bloom. We untap, Aether Vial ticking up. Second Spell Queller is nice, but if and only if we ever get to cast one. Lotus Bloom's ticking down for our opponent. They pass. We untap. Aether Vial ticking up to 2. We draw an island. Play an island. Play Shacklegeist. Pass the turn. Problem is one Lotus Bloom is coming off suspend, and that might be all they need. Okay, opponent upticks. Opponent downticks Lotus Blooms. They get to cast one. Angel's Grace. And this is either land ad nauseum or simian spirit guide ad nauseum. Double spirit guide ad nauseum. Alright, they beat us. Well, that's just the way it goes. So Force of Negation definitely in this matchup. Knight of Autumn. Hang on, let me make a little pile. Knight of Autumn, Collector Oof, Meddling Mage, all in. And what comes out? Selfless Spirit, I think Rattle Chains, Shacklegeist, and then, honestly, I don't know if you ever take Collected Company out of this deck, but this might be a time to take Collected Company out of this deck. Because I kind of want to max out on interaction. It's probably actually like a Glass Pool mimicking a Hierarch. Problem is, I took a lot of blue out for these Force Negations, but... Alright, we get to play first. We can play Meddling Mage, we can play Spell Queller, and we have stuff to pitch for Force of Negation. So we're going to start Hollowed Fountain tapped. Pass the turn. If my opponent starts with a bunch of Suspended Lotus Blooms, I might Meddling Mage Lotus Bloom. Okay, no Lotus Blooms, they pass. We untap, draw another Skyclave Apparition. We're gonna play Meddling Mage. Question is, what do we name? We have to name... So, okay, let me run down the options out loud here. Because I've played against Ad Nauseam so much. And I've played Ad Nauseam so much. The options are Angel's Grace, Ad Nauseam, Thassa's Oracle, Lightning Storm, or Mana Rocks. I'm not a big fan of naming Mana Rocks here. If we name Ad Nauseam, my opponent can Angel's Grace spoils Thassa's Oracle to win the game. If we name Angel's Grace, my opponent has to combo off with Phyrexian Unlife, but could potentially have removal for a creature on board. It would have to be like Slaughter Pact. We could name Thassa's Oracle, in which case they would try and just win with Lightning Storm. But they could exile their Lightning Storm, trying to like spoils or something. And then what was the other card that I named? Lightning Storm? Yeah, I don't think that's correct. Opponent wants to win with Thassa's Oracle, it's safer. So I'm going to Meddling Mage, and I think I name Angel's Grace, and force my opponent to try and play Unlife, which is expensive. Watch him have a Spell Snare and just be this like weird sideboard ad nauseum list. But Angel's Grace is one of their toughest spells for us to interact with. It's also one of their cheapest ways to combo. So I hope I have an advantage because of how much ad nauseum I've played. I mean, we probably could still lose to a relatively quick combo. If my opponent taps out for a Phyrexian Unlife or something like that, we can Skyclave Apparition to get rid of it. Opponent plays a Besiege You. Okay, so Force of Negation not going to be super useful, but that's fine. Draw Waterlogged Grove. So, play Cavern, name Spirit, go to combat and attack for 2. We're going to leave up Queller, at least until my opponent plays like a Mana Rock or something. Can't be countered on an instant or sorcery spell, doesn't matter for Spell Queller, but Spell Queller cannot counter Ad Nauseam. Alright, we untap, draw Mausoleum Wanderer, play Waterlogged Grove, go to combat, attack for 2, hit our opponent down to 16. Now the trick is to put as many speed bumps in front of Ad Nauseam as we possibly can. If my opponent casts Unlife, we would not Queller it. If they cast basically anything else that contributes to their game plan, we have to consider Quellering it? I don't know. Opponent plays a Temple of Deceit. Okay, they get a Scry. Alright, I'm gonna sack to draw here. Okay, we get a land. Untap. Draw Drog Skull Captain. Play Flooded Strand. Go to combat. Attack for 3. So I like Drog Skull Captain because now we have Spell Queller with Force of Negation backup. And Spell Queller is also uncounterable. Alright, opponent goes to combat, passes. Fetch Flooded Strand on their end step. Let's get a Breeding Pool. We untap. Draw Windswept Teeth. Play Windswept Teeth, go to combat. Attack for 3, take them to 10. Pass the turn, opponent untaps, plays a Plains. They cast Thassa's Oracle. So they can't have Angel's Grace spoils here. So we're going to let Thassa's Oracle, resolve. Looks to be just a way to kind of stop the bleeding a little bit. Opponent passes, we fetch up a Plains, untap. We draw another Spell Queller. Okay, go to combat. Attack for 1 in the air, take them to 9. I'm actually okay with running out a Spell Queller now, just for purposes of being aggressive. Opponent plays a Temple of Enlightenment. Okay, they played nothing. The concern would be our opponent having, like, Slaughter Pact, Angel's Grace ad nauseum. Okay, we untap. We draw a Supreme Phantom, which is great, because we can play Supreme Phantom and still hold up Queller and Force. Okay, Pump Wanderer. Go to combat, attack our opponent for 6 in the air. I could technically play Drog Skull Captain and have lethal here, but I think that's too risky. So my opponent probably is going to Echoing Truth. It can't be countered. We could quell this, but then Force of Negation is going to bump into Besiege You. So we'll just take the Mausoleum Wanderer back then. Opponent will take 3 and go to 4. They're still dead next turn. We still have an uncounterable Queller and a Force of Negation. Opponent casts a Serum Visions. They play a Dark Slick Shores and pass. We untap. Draw Windswept Teeth. Play Windswept Teeth. Crack Windswept Teeth. Get a Forest. Play Drog Skull Captain. Because this, I think, forces them to interact here. They have to do something, or they just lose. The only way that it wouldn't is if they had, like, Settle the Wreckage, which I've never seen ad nauseum play ever. Our opponent is casting an Abrupt Decay. You know what? If it means the victory, I'm going to cast this. Alright. We got there. We played intelligently around our opponent's game plan. Huzzah. We may not want Force of Negation, actually, in this matchup, if our opponent's playing Besiege You, but if our opponent's playing Besiege You, it means they're not winning quickly. Opponent gets to be on the play, which is good for them. We do have a Collector Oof into Skyclave Apparition Queller into Collected Company, which is great. If my opponent has an artifact mana reliant hand, they're going to have an Echoing Truth first, or a Slaughter Pact. Opponent plays Dark Slick Shores, passes. We draw Misty, so play Breeding Pool tapped, pass the turn. Opponent untaps, Serum Visions. They must have top-decked the Serum Visions, or they would have played it last turn. They play a City of Brass. We untap. Draw Drog Skull Captain. Play Seachrome Coast. Play Collector Oof. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They use a Simian Spirit Guide to play Phyrexian Unlife. So we're definitely playing Skyclave Apparition next turn to take out that Unlife. 100%. We untap. Draw Drog Skull Captain. Play Misty. Crack Misty. Get an island. Or, shoot. Get a Temple Garden. No. Hollowed Fountain. We want a Hollowed Fountain. I needed white mana, and I probably should have played the Flooded Strand, but our life total probably is not going to matter. So, Skyclave Apparition taking out Unlife. Hit our opponent for 2. Now we just kind of, like, disrupt our opponent's combo assembly and then beat down with tempo. The fact that they didn't play a land and they had to blow a Simian Spirit Guide to actually play that on life makes Skyclave Apparition on that feel really good. Play Flooded Strand, go to combat, attack our opponent for 4. I think we just Company here. Like, we could play Hierarch and hold up Queller, but Company feels stronger. Crack Flooded Strand, get an island. Cast Company. We'll get a Supreme Phantom, and I think just a Mausoleum Wanderer. We untap. Draw Knight of Autumn. So since we have since we have a Mausoleum Wanderer out, playing Drogskull Captain here is just completely fine. Just increases our clock a ton. Oh, I actually think I miscalculated. If I had grabbed one of the 2 power spirits like the Queller... No, never mind, I didn't. Wanderer here was still more damage. Okay, we hit our opponent down to 1, which unfortunately is the magic number. My opponent probably has at least 1 Angel's Grace, which they can use to remain at 1, and there's nothing we can really do about that. They draw Besieju, but Besieju can't even make mana at the moment, because it requires them to have at least 2 or more life to activate. They just tap City of Brass and kill themselves. Alright, cool. We beat Ad Nauseam. Ad Nauseam should be a great matchup for this deck, so I'm not surprised, but I'll see you guys in round 4. Alright. Round 4, here we go. Well, we have an Aether Vial hand, so we'll keep. Opponent starts Snow-Covered Island into a Delver. Okay, I'm going to go Flooded Strand, fetch an island, and play Aether Vial. Pass the turn. Delver does not flip. They play Prismatic Vista. We get hit for 1. We untap, Aether Vial ticking up. We draw Supreme Phantom. So, play Moorland Haunt. Play Supreme Phantom. Opponent Spell Snares. Nothing I can do about that. Pass the turn. It's probably just Izzet Delver. Okay, Delver still does not flip. They have the option to fetch to shuffle away what they're drawing, but they don't. This could also be mono blue. Okay, they hit us for 1, we go down to 17. Activate Vial, putting in Mausoleum Wanderer. Untap. Aether Vial ticking up. We draw Spell Queller. So play Horizon Canopy, go to combat, attack our opponent for 1. Alright, no blocks for our opponent. They go to 19, and they pass. If my opponent does not flip Delver, we're just going to make a 1/1 Spirit and block. Alright, opponent did flip Delver, they play a land. They go to combat, attack us for 3. This is fine. Take 3, go to 14, activate Moorland Haunt, get a 1/1. Okay, we untap. Aether Vial ticking up to the magic number 3. We get a Rattle Chains. At that point, I was kind of hoping for a land, but odds that my opponent has a lot of counter spells is extremely high. I think we still probably try to cast this captain. They're not going to have onboard removal more than they're going to have counter spells, and if my opponent has an Archmage's Charm or a Cryptic Command, we'll probably just Spell Queller that. The alternative is like Vialing in a Glasspool Mimic if this resolves, but the odds that this resolves is basically 0. Well, the odds that, it doesn't get countered anyway. So my opponent fetches either because they have 2 2-mana counter spells or because they have a Cryptic Command. We're going to Vial in a Queller because countering Cryptic Command is going to be great. I could have also just cracked Wanderer, but I want to get in the damage. Go to combat, hit our opponent for 6. Pass. And now we have a larger blocker than their Delver is an attacker, and that's pretty sweet. Whoa! That's bad. Just realized that my arms can go under my desk, but my chair also can lean back, and it's at such a clearance right now that I lifted up my whole desk. Alright, opponent takes 6 and goes to 12. They draw a card. So, if my opponent attacks, I don't actually think that we block. My opponent can unsummon the Drogskull Captain, but that just allows them to attack and threatens us with a Cryptic Command. There's no reason for us to block here, though, because we're still at 12 life. Yeah. So we were going to play Captain, then Violent Mimic on Captain, and then just kill our opponent. Versus Mono Blue Delver, we probably want Path to Exile. We may want Force of Negation, because our opponent is playing things like Jace. But I'm not sure we really need it. So I'm going to cut Mimic, and I'm going to cut a Selfless Spirit, and I'm going to cut, you know what, another Selfless Spirit. Let's try it like this. My opponent doesn't seem to have a lot of threats in Mono Blue. Delver is going to be the biggest one, I think. They could have like a Stormwing entity or something crazy like that, but we could keep this hand because we do have a number of blue stuff that we can cast, but the problem is we're going to be casting it. I would really, really like an Aether Vial or a Cavern versus my opponent, so I'm going to mulligan because that hand was a little bit subpar. This hand is fine. I'm going to put back Shacklegeist. Obviously, given the option, we will want to play Aether Vial first, unless my opponent is holding up a Spell Pierce, which they are not. If my opponent has Force of Negation here, that sucks, but at the same time, they're also going to be down a large number of cards, so they're going to have to try and win quickly. Okay. Opponent untaps, they flip Delver with a Serum Visions. They crack Flooded Strand, get a basic island, and attack us for 3. This is fine. Aether Vial ticking up. We draw Rattle Chains, which is excellent. Play Horizon Canopy. Pass the turn. So Rattle Chains we can use as a blocker, but it's something we can force our opponent to counter on their own turn. Another Delver. Opponent goes to combat, they attack. So we're going to flash in Rattle Chains to block. This should force a Mana Leak or a Spell Snare or something. Okay? So we take 3. But what this should allow is us to cast Collected Company next turn. Put Noble into play. Untap. Vial up to 2. We draw another Vial. Play Flooded Strand. Fetch with Flooded Strand. Get an island. Collected Company. I don't think my opponent has Force because their deck appears to have a lot of budget considerations. So we're going to get Queller and Phantom. Alright. Pass the turn. I'm going to leave this Vile Phantom as a surprise. Okay, Delver of Secrets. Does flip. Opponent gets an Archmage's Charm. They draw a card. Crack Prismatic Vista. They may just try and steal our Aether Vial. They're going to steal our Noble Hierarch. Okay. Opponent goes to combat. They're going to attack with Exalted. Well, I got some bad news for you. We have another Phantom. So, block and kill it. And the game is over. Nice. So we're 2-2 going into round 5. And I'll see you guys there. Alrighty, round 5, here we go. Well, it's a fair hand, but I think Mausoleum Wanderer is fine, or makes this hand a little bit better at least. So we're going to keep. It's Tron! Alright. We draw a Queller. Play Flooded Strand, crack Flooded Strand, get an island. Play Mausoleum Wanderer. Pass the turn. So, if my opponent plays a Sylvan Scrying, we would counter it. Otherwise, we're gonna... Oh, it's Blue Tron. Specifically, Blue-Black Tron. Well, it's Blue Tron. They're probably playing black for Engineered Explosives, Murkwater Pathway, generally. Alright, we draw Windswept Heath. So play Windswept Heath, crack Windswept Heath, get a Plains, play Selfless Spirit. This probably gets remanded or condescended, but we can't not do this because it's our only play on turn 2, and we miss a damage if this doesn't resolve. Okay. Opponent does have a condescend, we can't pay for it. I feel like if we keep a hand with Cavern or Aether Vial, our opponent is going to struggle a lot in this matchup. Alright, we go to combat, hit them for 1. It was not worth sacking Mausoleum Wanderer to counter Condescend there, because Mausoleum Wanderer's higher value than Selfless Spirit is. We want to hit things like Thirst for Knowledge or other stuff that is in a similar vein. Okay, we untap. We draw a Supreme Phantom. So I'm going to play a Forest, and we're going to attack for 1. Just leave up Spell Queller, I think. Okay, opponent goes to 18. Mono Blue Tron is in a weird sort of tempo position where they want to play tempo, they want to counter your spells, and if they can't do that, they become a really inconsistent deck. So if we don't cast spells, or we can cast spells uncounterably, they don't get to cycle through their deck with remands and condescends and stuff like that. So, play Windswept Teeth, go to combat, attack our opponent for 1, And since they're very far from assembling Tron, we don't have to immediately worry about like an Ugin or anything like that. I would like to increase our clock, but I'm going to try to do so safely, because my opponent has to cast something at some point. Another tower. They are at 5 mana. They only have 1 blue. I'm going to flash Queller now, because next turn we can play 2 lords. Alright, they're going to commit. We don't really want to redraw Queller, so I'm fine fetching with Windswept Teeth here. Get a Hallowed Fountain after the fact. We untap. We draw. Aether Vial. Play Horizon Canopy. Play Drogskull Captain. Okay, Pump Wanderer. Play Supreme Phantom. Go to combat. Hit our opponent for 5. And now we just got to turn on the gas and try and kill our opponent before they can connect with a Worm Coil or they can land an Ugin. Okay, opponent plays a Relic. They cycle Relic. They play Map. They're cracking Map. Okay, yeah, I think they're dead. Because we can just Glasspool Mimic Drogskull Captain, and I think that gives us enough power to just kill our opponent. It's unlikely my opponent plays Force of Negation, but Glasspool Mimic I think is safer than Collected Company here, just in case they do. Go to combat. Hit our opponent for 12. It's all hexproof, so no dismembers. And our opponent was F6'd anyway, so it doesn't look like they have it. Okay. Well, the good news is that worked for us. Let me think about this. We could want Knight of Autumn. We could want Force. We could also want Collector Oof or Meddling Mage. Meddling Mage is a little bit worse against Mono Blue Tron than it is versus Mono Green Tron. You can use it to name a consistency tool, but Mono Blue Tron doesn't necessarily need its consistency tools. And it also has a wider array. You also have a tougher time naming threats in Mono Blue Tron with Meddling Mage, because they generally play like one of each threat for some reason. Like they'll have a Sundering Titan, an Ugin, a couple of Karn Great Creators, and then like a few other random miscellaneous threats. Knight of Autumn, we can hit an important artifact, but the odds that we like snipe down an expedition map is pretty low. We could hit, what is it called? A Talisman or something like that, but generally my opponent wants to stay on the reactive game plan. I think I am going to bring in a Collector Oof, and I'm going to drop Shacklegeist for it. It's a little weird to run Collector Oof in an Aether Vial deck. Hopefully that doesn't matter too much. Alright, going to keep this hand. Seems fairly decently powerful. Okay, we draw a Noble Hierarch, which I can use to play Queller, but I think it's more important to play Mausoleum Wanderer to start. Generally, your opponent wants to go like Tron Land Map, then untap, play Island, if they're playing Mono Blue Tron. Yep. Alright, we untap. We draw Queller. Go to combat. Attack for 1. The only thing I would counter with Wanderer right now would be a Repeal. So we're going to bank on them not having a Remand. Or Remand or whatever, and play Noble Hierarch. If they're going to Condescend, they can Condescend to Scry, but they're not going to be able to actually counter our Noble. Okay, they have Remand. In that case, do I want to Mausoleum Wanderer to prevent them from drawing a card? I actually kind of think it's important enough. I'm going to do it. Alright, opponent untaps. They play a Tron land. And they thirst on their main phase. Looking for Tron. They pitch Worm Coil Engine. We untap. Draw Cavern. Alright. Name Spirit. Go to combat. And attack for 1. Hit our opponent down to 18. They untap. Let's hope they don't have Tron into a big threat. If they play like Karn Great Creator, we can Queller it. Okay, opponent plays River of Tears. And passes. I am going to cast an uncounterable Spell Queller here. Because we have another one. But also because I want to start to get some spirits on board, so we can go wide, pressure them, start playing Lords and stuff. My opponent could repeal this. And they do. Okay, opponent gets to cast nothing. We untap. We draw. A Mausoleum Wanderer. So play Seachrome Coast, play Wanderer, hold back for a turn, pass the turn. Okay, opponent's turn. Opponent plays another non-tower Tron land. They play a Maze Mine Tome. I anticipate being able to kill my opponent prior to this being relevant, but it does draw them cards. This is a little bit premature, but I think we're still going to Queller here. My opponent probably has a Thirst for Knowledge or another more important spell. If they do, and we absolutely feel the need, we can use Wanderer to counter it. But I think I would much rather, like untap, draw an untapped land, and then play Captain Mimic and start beating down huge numbers. The only concern is Ugin, really. Ugin or O-Stone, I suppose. So opponent has Dismember. So they're going to get to cast Maze Mine Tome anyway. Which will draw them a card. There's no reason to sack Wanderer here, so... Okay. Opponent can have Maze Mine Tome back. And then they pass. Alright, I would really like to draw land. Another Wanderer is actually not bad. Play Wanderer. Pump Wanderer. Play Captain. Opponent draws a card. Captain enters, pumps the team, go to combat, attack for 5 with Exalted. They go to 9. They untap. We are shields down at the moment. And they just assembled Tron, so this is probably where they're going to beat us if they can. The good news is, Sundering Titan is only mildly punishing. O-Stone would be terrible for us. Ugin would be terrible for us. Karn Great Creator would be mostly bad, because my opponent could probably get away with an Ensnaring Bridge here. They have nothing? That seems a bit suspect. I would really like to draw an untapped land. That would make me feel so much better about what I'm about to do. Okay, we get a Selfless Spirit. Okay, so play Selfless Spirit. I wanted to play Mimic and have Queller backup. Because that would guarantee lethal. We're going to attack our opponent down to 1. If this is a repeal, we can Queller it because of what mana they have to pay for it. If it's an Aetherize or something like that, or oh, it's a Shark Typhoon? Okay. So opponent can make a 5/5 Shark. Sure. So they're probably going to block the Lord. And they have something else. Another Shark Typhoon. Alright, well we can't counter either of those. So let's see how they block. One on the Lord, one in front of the other. Threatening creature here. So, hang on a sec. I think we just crack Selfless Spirit, actually, and let our opponent take 3. They lose this Shark, but they get to keep the other. Yeah, there's no reason for us to run out Queller. There could be if there was a way for us to pump this guy to kill the Shark, but that's not the case. So we kill one Shark, we lose our Selfless Spirit. They get to scry 1. I mean, we still have a Queller. Thought Not Seer. Yep. I do have to quell that, because otherwise they just take Queller. So we exile Thought Not Seer, pump up the Spirit tokens, the Mausoleum Wanderers. But it plays another Tron land, but is only just now realizing that River of Tears taps for black after playing a land. Oh, they may have done it. They made the punt that I made. I did the same thing. And honestly, I think River of Tears has more utility, but there's no reason to play River of Tears over the Clearwater Murkwater pathway. I mean, I guess it's technically it always taps for blue until you don't want it to, so maybe there is some utility for it. But it's a card you really gotta watch. It's the only one of its kind, so... I mean, if they have a Dismember, they could cheapen it this way, but it would only kill the Lord. Okay. They currently have 7 mana available, so we cannot stop them with Mausoleum Wanderers. Keep saying Maelstrom, don't mean it. Opponent repeals Spell Queller. Alright, it's not worth sacking both Mausoleum Wanderers to get rid of that. Opponent Thought-Knot Seers, they can take Glasspool Mimic, or they can take Spell Queller. So if they take Spell Queller and we draw Supreme Phantom, we win. Because we can Supreme Phantom, Glasspool Mimic, Supreme Phantom, and attack with 2 lethal creatures. If we draw a 2-mana Spirit... Actually, if we draw any 2-mana Spirit, it's fine. Okay. So opponent passes. Or Mausoleum Wanderer, any 1-mana or 2-mana Spirit here would win the game. We draw another Glasspool Mimic, which does not win the game. I think we still cast it, though. We could copy Mausoleum Wanderer, go to combat... Attack for 4 in the air. The problem is my opponent is going to gain life off of this Maze Mind Tome next turn, and potentially land a big threat. So if these Glasspool Mimics were Phantasmal Images, we would actually have 1 here. Alright, well, opponent is down to 2. They activate Maze Mind Tome to draw a card. We have no more instant speed interaction, other than, well, I guess we could activate Mausoleum Wanderers, but... the odds that Force Spike is going to be relevant against a guy who has, what is that, 13 mana? Probably not very large. Opponent plays another Thought-Knot Seer, so they're going to take Glasspool Mimic from us. Okay, they gain some life, they draw a card. They play an island, they go to combat. They can probably safely get in with 1 Thought-Knot, but they're playing it extra safe. So, like, Skyclave Apparition would be a good draw here. Taking out a Thought-Knot would draw us a card. Okay, we untap. Draw an Aether Vial, which is our worst top deck. And I don't think we can recover from this position. We're very close, but my opponent has pretty well stabilized. I mean, I guess I could get, like, a Collected Company that's lucky and resolve it, but... Pass the turn. I guess it depends on how conservatively my opponent plays. Alright, yeah, I'm actually just going to concede and we'll go to next game. Alright, maybe we want Force of Negation. It would at least help protect us from like an O-Stone or an Ugin or a Planeswalker on their own turn. Question is, what would I take out for that? And I think it'd be a Noble Hierarch and a Mimic. Let's try like that. We'll play first, which is a big advantage. We get to keep a hand with Cavern as well. So, yeah, we'll keep. Start Windswept Teeth, crack Windswept Teeth, get a Hollowed Fountain tapped. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps, plays an island, we untap, draw Force of Negation, play Cavern, name Spirit, play Supreme Phantom, pass the turn. Opponent plays an Urza's Tower, Spatial Contortion. Okay, we couldn't have forced anyway, so... Play Seachrome Coast, and I'm going to leave up Hardcast Force, actually. Skyclave Apparition's only good if our opponent's resolving permanents onto the board right now. I'm not going to play a 3-mana 2-2 and try to beat down with it. Okay, opponent plays a Field of Ruin. I was going to say, if they activate Field on their turn or ours, we can cast Skyclave, or we can cast Collected Company. Okay, we untap. They're going to field our Cavern, float a mana, get a Forest, opponent's going to get an Island, play Collected Company, and let's get Mausoleum Wanderer and Drogskull Captain. We draw Spell Queller, which is good. Play Flooded Strand, pass the turn. I'm probably going to fetch up a Temple Garden, but I do have Force of Negation if my opponent casts anything scary on their turn. Any non-creature scary things, I should say. I would force an Expedition map here, which feels super awkward, but is necessary. Engineered Explosives on 1. That's fine. Opponent passes. So we crack Flooded Strand, get a Temple Garden. Untap. Draw Drogskull Captain. Play Drog Skull Captain. Okay. Pump the team, go to combat. Attack for 7, but my opponent is going to crack explosives, so in reality it's only 3. Hit them to 17. Play Breeding Pool tapped. Pass the turn. All of our spirits now have hexproof, which is very highly desirable. Although we don't have a way to resolve more spirits at the moment. Not through counter magic and stuff, anyway. Play Horizon Canopy, go to combat. Attack for 6. 5 mana. Opponent is going to cycle a Shark Typhoon. Crap, I forgot about that. Draw Waterlogged Grove. Well, we can't stop the Shark Typhoon, unfortunately. But they do have to trade. So they still take 3. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play an island. They have 6 mana now. If they tap out for a Wormcoil Engine, I am just going to have to flash Queller in. Because we have to try and beat down as much as possible. If they cast a... doesn't look like they're going to cast anything. I was going to say if they cast a Thought-Knot Seer, I would also try and Queller that. Alright, we untap. Draw Mausoleum Wanderer. Play Waterlogged Grove. Play Wanderer. I'm not going to attack with a Lord into potentially another Shark Typhoon cycle. Okay, opponent assembles Tron. Mindslaver. Oh, this is bad. Attempt to cast Force. Condescend X3. They did play a land, so they can't activate Mindslaver this turn. We're not going to pay for Condescend. Maybe I should have actually pitched for Force there, but my opponent could have had a Remand and then Condescend. The problem is we have no way to answer this Mindslaver once it's on board. I think they were going to try and activate Mindslaver there. Alright, they pass. We untap. Draw Supreme Phantom. Play the Phantom. Spell Snare. Play the Spell Queller. Take out Spell Snare. The real problem is if my opponent has Academy Ruins, they have the Mindslaver lock. They don't have very long to assemble it, but if they have the Academy Ruins, I think we're just dead because we have Waterlogged Grove. Okay, we're getting Mindslavered. So they're buying a turn. That is a lot of time. I can't do anything about that, okay? Okay. They pass to our turn. The nice thing about Skyclave Apparition is that Skyclave Apparition can't target our own stuff, which is probably only relevant in this exact scenario, but they sack a land and we draw a Shacklegeist. I think their best bet is to just float all our mana and then activate Mazemind Tome to draw. Spatial Contortion on the Lord, which there's nothing we can do about because we are Mindslavered. So then my opponent can just pay for the Mausoleum Wanderer activation, and then kill the Lord. Okay, they're going to scry with Mazemind Tome. But as long as they don't have, like, Tower, Academy Ruins, or Ugin or O-Stone, I think we're okay. If we draw a Lord, they die. Okay. Opponent untaps. We have 6 because we have no interaction capability at all. Okay. Ugin the Ineffable. Opponent kills the Lord and plays a Wormcoil Engine. Then they draw a card off of Mazemind Tome. We untap. We draw a Selfless Spirit. So we need to play Shacklegeist, and we need to have another spirit on board. Play Shacklegeist. The question is it Selfless Spirit or is it Skyclave Apparition? Skyclave Apparition limits my opponent's draws, so I think we're going to go with Skyclave Apparition. If my opponent draws a
Oh, I could have attacked there. I missed damage. That was a mistake. I, for some reason, thought I had to tap Shacklegeist and 2 others. Okay, opponent makes a Spirit. Passes. We untap. Draw Spell Queller. Play Selfless Spirit. Play Spell Queller. Exile Remand. And we're going to go for the win right now. Luckily, that 2 damage didn't seem to matter, but I could have killed Ugin and prevented my opponent from having that spirit. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 6. Really, really pray that they don't have Shark Typhoon. Oh my god! Really? And they make an 8/8 Shark. This is a huge problem. My opponent takes 4, goes to 2, but they're going to gain 6 next turn, and they're very close to having a lethal amount of damage. Yep. Me missing 2 damage there lost me the game, because I misread Shacklegeist. I forgot it could tap itself. And they have Academy Ruins, so we have exactly this turn to try and find a way to win. If we draw a Spirit Lord and it resolves, that is exactly enough damage to win. Unfortunately for us, we do not have any Lord we can copy with Glasspool Mimic. Oh, it's so frustrating. Well, play Glasspool Mimic. Yeah, me missing 2 damage just killed us. Copy Shacklegeist. Tap the Shark. That's so frustrating. Go to combat. Yeah, I either thought Shacklegeist couldn't tap itself if it said tap 2 other spirits you control, or Shacklegeist said tap tap it and 2 other spirits. Alright. Yes, we're gonna die to Mindslaver Lock. No, it's still not good. I do not think you should be playing Mindslaver Lock if you're playing Bluetron. Especially not on Moto. I know it's kind of like a traditional way to win, you know, whatever. We should have beat our opponent. That's really frustrating. That was a big punt, and I'm sorry. All in all, I think Spirits is in a pretty decent part of the metagame right now. I think if you understand the deck a little bit better than I do, you can probably do a lot better with it than I did. What did we learn? I don't know about Glasspool Mimic. I understand why it's run in this deck. You know, potentially if you need a land, it's a land. But on the other problem is, like, the deck is focused in the 3 CMC slots, so like having Aether Vial on 3 allows you to play a clone as well as all of your best spirits, because you can play Apparition, Queller, Captain, or Mimic. But I really think Glasspool Mimic ought to be Phantasmal Image, because Drogskull Captain will protect it if it's cloning a spirit. Being able to play Phantasmal Image like up the curve might be better. If you're cloning, like you could clone a Mausoleum Wanderer and have an additional one. It's a little more fragile, but I think that might actually be better. I don't know. Sideboard was a little weird. Like I said, playing Collector Oof in an Aether Vial deck is a little bit odd. We didn't run into Burn, so Core Firewalker was never relevant. Remorseful Cleric, not sure if I was supposed to bring that in versus Uro Omnath, whatever, or if I was supposed to keep that for like only the Dredge matchup. Just because I don't have a lot of experience playing this deck. I'll probably play this deck again in the future, because I do like Spirits, but probably going to wait and hold off for a bit. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed this content, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember you can follow me on Twitch. Same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, though the last few have been earlier. And yeah, I hope to see you guys in the next one. You're all wonderful human beings. Thanks for watching. Bye!